Hello there and welcome back to the boatyard where I am working on my fiberglass cabin cruiser Twiggy. It is about 2 weeks since I had to rush off due to an emergency right in the middle of doing the bits of work on the transom. It's a nice day today, forecast no rain, bit of blue sky up there. Actually some dodgy looking clouds, but the forecast is dry, so I'm hoping to continue what I was doing last time, which is to say putting a bit of thickened resin on the back of the transom here just to pad it out a bit, because there seems to be a discrepancy between where the new wood core will lie and the back of the boat, so fill that out a bit. Put loads more thinned resin onto the wood so that it soaks in. Possibly join the two bits of wood together, because the two halves of the transom core is an 18mm bit and a 12mm bit. I need to shape the 12mm bit to match the 18mm bit, because the 18mm is the one that I've shaped to the right size. And then there's also a load of holes in the boat that I just need to fill with thickened resin. Those were all the tasks I was hoping to do in the afternoon last time that I didn't get round to, and hopefully today will be the day. Fingers crossed. I already gave this a sand last time before I was called away, so now it just needs a bit of a wipe down with acetone, and then it'll be ready for some fiberglass. I was just going to slather it in very thickened resin, but I think I'm going to put a single sheet of this chop strand mat down in the middle and then put some thickened resin over the top if it needs more of a build up. This has all gone horribly wrong. I'd sufficiently soaked the fiberglass that it all fell apart when I picked it up, and now it's just this horrible mess over here which I'm going to have to try and tamp down somehow. Ah! I think the roller has rescued it, but I just realised I'm not wearing my mask. I had to take my gloves off at one point. Honestly, this is very much a how not to do, I think you'll agree. However, the roller has rescued it. That is now flat against the back. I don't want to waste the little bit of resin I've got left, so I'm going to mix in some colloidal silica and patch up some of the holes. It is a few minutes later, and let us take stock. I couldn't keep moving the camera around as I did various bits there. I had my hands absolutely covered in fiberglass and stuff, and I didn't want to handle the camera, obviously. But I have managed to achieve quite a few useful things there before the resin mixed stuff went set. So I'm actually quite pleased in the end with how that went. For example, I filled that hole and those holes, which went a little bit awry because I forgot I hadn't put anything on the other side to stop the resin coming through, but they're very definitely filled now. And I filled that one, and there's one over there, there's another one up there, there's a load down there which I've now put resin into, and then also if you look under here, more resin smoothing out all of this, which is the splash deck part of the where the outboard sits and all the water goes in there. And yes, I am aware I will need to re-drill that hole to let splashed water back out again, but for the moment I'm just making it all smooth. The old hole, weirdly, was although there's a little drain here, the old hole was slightly raised, so the drain was pointless. You'd need the hole at the bottom point of the drain, and it wasn't. So I'm going to re-drill that anyway. And there's also a hole over here that I've just put some filler in. But there's more! I managed to add a little further a fillet of fiberglass to my thing over here. And yes, I know people keep saying I need a drain hole for the bilge here. I don't. I'm not going to bring the boat out of water in winter on a trailer. I will not need to. This is going to be permanently underwater. So I do not want a hole there, even with a bung in it. If there's any water in the bilge, I will have a bilge pump which can get rid of it. There is access to the bilge from inside. I put a little extra bit of filler there, which is now building up quite nicely. And then on this corner, which has never been quite as nice as the other corner, I've put a bit of the filler around there. There was also, weirdly, a chip, hang on. There was a right big chunk taken out of the boat here. so I've sanded that back and put a bit of filler in there as well to bolster that up. Meanwhile, look at that cloud. The forecast definitely said no rain. I'm not convinced. It had better not rain on what I've just done. I'll be very annoyed. I find myself now at something of a slightly awkward impasse. The middle section of the transom still needs a bit more building up, but I've only got a tiny bit of resin left in that 1 kilogram container. I've probably got less than 100 grams, and as we discovered a moment ago, I needed slightly more than that. I have got another container of resin, but it's 5 kilograms, and that's way more than I'm ever going to use today, or indeed before winter properly sets in and I have to stop doing what I'm doing. And it seems a terrible waste to open up a 5 kilogram container, because once it's open it will start going off fairly quickly. I've found that the resin containers, if they're unused, totally sealed, they are lasting, but if you open them then they start to go off. So that will clearly go off over winter. Be a massive waste. It's not cheap stuff, this vinyl ester. I don't really want to open the 5 kilogram one, but that means until I get some more I'm going to have to order in another 1 kilogram, I think. That will obviously take a few days to arrive, and we'll then just have to hope there's another sunny day. Then I can finish doing the building up of the layers. I know this is as annoying for me as it probably is frustrating for you as a viewer, going, for the love of goodness, get on with it, David. Yes, I have limited time. I have mentioned this before. I can only pop down here every now and again, and it has to be a sunny day that coincides with one of my free days. So this is going to take a decade to finish. I mean, not just the transom, the whole boat, hopefully. I really did want to get this done this year. That was the grand plan. The circumstances have not permitted that. Next year, we'll have to see how things go. I just don't think that in winter outdoors I'm going to get any fiberglassing done. And we're coming up to that time now. This is where are we now? 24th of September as I'm filming this. And there's a couple more sunny days due, but I can't get here. So I think what I'm going to do is cut the other bit of wood so that it's the same size as the first bit. Once what I've just done has gone off a bit, I can then make sure that both bits of wood fit in here and order some more resin so that I can at least soak them in the resin and make them waterproof-ish. But as for the actual putting them in and fiberglassing the whole back off, that's clearly not going to happen now until spring, I think. Unless we get some really random warm winter days, and if we do, fantastic, I'll be down here if I can. For the moment though, need to let all this dry and set, and then I can put those 2 bits of wood together and cut them to the same size. The plan now then is to screw these 2 bits of wood back together so they act as one sheet, and I can draw around the smaller one onto the bigger one and then cut the bigger one so it matches the smaller one, because the smaller one is the one that fits. That done, I shall now fasten them together again and make sure they are the same size. And I'm pleased to say, as you would kind of hope, having drawn round the one and then cut it, they are now pretty much bang on. I think the newly cut one could do with a bit of sanding round the edges, but it's pretty much one chunk of wood now. Although this top one is sticking up a bit here because a massive blob of resin landed on the wrong side of this bit of wood, so it's sticking out. That can be sanded off. But that could now be inserted into there as one lump thing to see if it fits as a single unit, as long as the glassing I did earlier is now sufficiently dry. And you know, it actually is. It's a little bit tacky, tiny bit tacky. The odd strand of fiberglass hanging off here and there, but it's strong enough that I could put that thing in and see if it fits, I think. I do suspect it's going to prove troublesome putting it in as one thing because there is that lip at the bottom, but I'll give it a go, see how we get on. That'll be a no then. I wonder what happens if I put the one I know fits in and then try and squish the other one in on top. I'll have to unscrew it first. Now, I've just realised I didn't account for something. It's going to be a little difficult to show, but down in the corners here, where this back edge is, there is an inner thickened bit that goes down at an angle. Right, there we go. You can just see inside the lip. There's a sticky out bit. Just kind of there-ish. Which I'll need to account for on that second bit of wood. That's a pain. Also, I am pretty certain that that gap there is not 12mm. Oh, and there's a corner bit I'll need to account for, but I don't think that is 12mm, even though I measured this all as 30. That may well be. Let's get a measuring device of some sort. Incidentally, having put that single sheet of fibreglass behind here, I can already feel this has less depth behind it, less bend, so that has worked to a degree. Turns out it is actually 12mm. Just from here, I mean, it's probably 11.5 if we're being picky. 12, yeah, 12 there, and it's 12 there, but then just when you get to about here, it slightly slopes in a bit, so that's still 12, but it's got that little sticky out bit on the other side, but it's 12 to the edge of the fibreglass. But then here it goes down to 10mm. Given cutting a slopey bit through half the width of the wood, you know, that could be an excuse to buy a router. If I don't have a router, cutting through half the width of the wood on a slopey bit is going to be quite tricky. I might just chop a diagonal from here to where that bit inside vanishes. Just chop a diagonal off. I don't think that's going to impact the overall rigidity of the entire transom very much. Well, not at all, really. So chop from there down to there, and then it'll go in. Probably the same on the other side. Although I can't see the same little inner sticky out bit over the other side. There's definitely one here, and it disappears down to about here. So I think cut a diagonal from just below the screw hole. That's a useful marker, a useful reference point. The screw hole is 1.5 centimetres above where I need to chop. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. After a lot of jamming it in and swearing, it's nearly there, but I think I need to plane about 1 millimetre off the top. I don't have a planer, so I guess I'll just attack it with the angle grinder with a sanding disc and effectively plane 1 millimetre off the top. Well, I must confess, rather to my own great surprise, it fits! You can see how it's very much flush along the top. And cutting that bit off, what I'll do is I'll stick loads of thickened resin underneath there to fill the void, obviously, and there's going to be loads of resin all around the edges here, and then of course the whole thing gets covered in fibreglass. But taking that little bit off has just enabled it to get down. It was a bit of a squeeze, but it did go in fairly well. I might just take a tiny bit more off, just a tiny bit. I know it's the start of the end of, you know, you'll take a bit more, then take a bit more, then take a bit more, but it's in, and a bit of fibreglassing over that will have a transom. as we like to say in the boat repair world. Ta-da! One more bit of fettling later, and I don't know about you, but I am counting that as a triumph. They both fit. They're nice and snug. It's going to be quite easy, famous last words, but quite easy to just run around with a loads of resin and round the edges, screw them together, resin them in place, fiberglass over the back, and before you know it, Twiggy will be floating again. That is a good point, I think, to stop for now. So thank you for watching, thank you for bearing with me if you have been, and who knows what the future holds. Maybe a floating boat. Wow. Cheerio.